Hey, it's New Year's. A couple years ago, I did a countdown to midnight, and not a lot of people watched it, but I still think it's important to look back on the past year and ask yourself, which videos did the best? At least that's what I do. And I thought you might find this interesting also. So I've got in my hand here the top 10 videos off my channel from the past year. Top 10 videos from Steve Lehto, the main channel, Lehto's Law. So these are the top 10 videos and how well they did. And I'm surprised because most of them are videos from this year. And you might go, wait, huh? Well, a couple years ago when I did this, my top 10 videos of the year, several of them were quite old and had just continued to do well. And so I'm not sure if that's an indication of things getting better or worse. I think it's getting better because if 8 out of my top 10 videos this year were made this year, that means my new videos are rocking. So number 10, Country Club sued for not giving truck to man who hit hole in one. That got 435,000 views, which for me is good numbers. And of course, that's exactly what you think it was. Guy went to a golf course, was golfing in a tournament, and they said if somebody hits a hole in one on this hole, they win this truck, and there's a truck there. And he hit a hole in one. And the Country Club said, well, we're not the ones promoting this, so someone else is on the hook for this. And the dealership who lent the truck said, we were just lending a truck for like eye candy. We weren't donating a truck. And it turns out nobody ever actually bought the policy of insurance necessary to cover if they had to give away the truck on a hole in one. So anyways, a lawsuit got filed. Don't know what happened with that, but that was 435,000 views. And that only went up in October. So that's pretty good. Number 9, dealer repos car. Teen bought with cash. Now, this is one of the 2 videos that actually went up last year, but it went up in December of last year. So about a year ago, and it's number 9 on the list with 444,000 views. And of course, that would be a bad car dealer. So I like to pay attention to not just the topics, but who the various actors are. So number 10 was a country club, but number 9 was a car dealer, as was number 8. Number 8. Dealer tells customer to pay for engine failure during test drive. Now that came out in September of this year, 448,000 downloads, and that'd be another bad dealer. And so somebody went to a car dealership, was test driving a car, and the engine blew up during the test drive. And they said, oh, that's on you. It makes me laugh when people say silly things. What can I tell you? Number 7 was one of the first videos I put up in this year. It went up on January 4th, and it was the surefire trick to beat any DUI. And I was talking about there's the urban legend that if a police officer pulls you over for suspicion of drunk driving, you can crack open an alcohol right in front of him, some beer or whiskey or something, and make sure he sees you crack the seal, and then guzzle it in front of him, and he can't prove that you did that after versus before, and therefore all your test results are off. Several people pointed out that that was a subplot in a bunch of different TV shows, including one episode of LA Law. But the point is that, number 1, to beat any DUI, you'd have to, I guess, keep a sealed bottle of whiskey or Jack Daniels or something in your car at the ready in case that happens. And I saw some articles people sent me where they documented various cases, and are usually very strange, where somebody is involved in an accident, and about an hour later, they go, oh, we should give this person a breathalyzer. And in the meantime, the person did go and have some alcoholic drinks. That's possible. But the idea that you should always keep a sealed bottle of alcohol in your car so that you can do that in front of the police officer, I would not recommend that you do that. So that was the number 7 video from this past year. And that was 453,000 views. It picked up in about a year, so it went up January 4th. So number 6 was a robocaller video, and I do a lot of videos about robocallers. Some do well, some do not. But I think people like this one because a court had ordered ISPs to block 3 specific services. That video went up in May and has acquired 461,000 downloads. Again, very good numbers. And of course, the thing I think that caught people there was the court was actually ordering some relief, something that might actually work. So up till now, we've heard all these threats and saber rattling and fines that might be levied but never paid. And so here we've got a court ordering internet service providers to block specific services in an attempt to shut down the robocalls. Of course, it did nothing. Never does. But it was a nice gesture. It was a nice gesture. We are now in the top five. Top five. Number 5, city wants woman to pay $259,000 fine for the house next door. Now, this one has almost 500,000 hits, 495,000 hits. January 21st, it went up, less than a year ago. So the city wanted the woman to pay a fine because they had a mix-up in their database. And they thought she lived next door as opposed to where she actually lived. And that happened a couple different times. We also had a story earlier where somebody bought a piece of property, built a house, and discovered they'd built the house on the wrong piece of property, that kind of thing. And so these things do happen, and property line disputes also pop up from time to time. But here it was simply a fine that was being levied apparently against the house next door, but they thought she should pay it for some inexplicable reason. Number 4 is another government story where the clerk who asked for time off was told they could not take the time off, so they quit. And the entire town shut down as a result, which I think may have taught them a lesson. 552,000 downloads on that one. Clerk denied time off, quits, and the entire town shuts down. So once in a while, you got to step back and ask yourself the questions about the bigger picture here. This clerk here wants a couple days off. Is it going to hurt you that much to give him the time off? Because consider the alternatives. The entire town might shut down. Number 3 is one of the 2 stories from last year. Actually came out in November of 2021. Police arrest 10-year-old girl for picture she drew. Now, I know some people said, Steve, you really downplayed that because the picture apparently was quite graphic. It may have contained some language that was threatening in nature, and so on and so forth. And my primary concern with these stories, I've done a couple, is when police get called to a school and they treat a 10-year-old like they're an adult. And I also did a video a few years back, and I got a lot of flack about it, where I was talking about how they often handcuff kids in an attempt to scare them straight. And they'll often joke about how they can't, have a hard time getting the handcuffs over their little wrists. And I remember having people say to me, Steve, if that kid had a gun, he could kill you. So obviously you got to handcuff him. Kid didn't have a gun. But if he did... But yeah, the police arrested a 10-year-old girl for the picture she drew, and that one got 624,000 downloads. Number 3 on the list for this past year. Now, number 2 was a topic I covered in several videos, but the video that did the best was number 2 on the list. Hospital sues at-will workers for getting better jobs. Remember that one? In Wisconsin, a group of workers who were working at a hospital were offered better jobs at a nearby hospital. So they said, oh, okay, and they quit, and they were going to go to the new jobs. And the hospital they were quitting from ran to court on a Friday and got a TRO, a temporary restraining order, to stop them from leaving. And I did the story when it happened, I believe on the Friday, and I predicted and said I suspect that at the hearing on Monday, the judge will lift the TRO, but is simply granting it because he might want these parties to work something out. And he did lift the TRO, but I don't think they reached a resolution other than the people just went and went over to their new jobs. So a lot of people were upset by that, and I was as well. I try not to get too bent out of shape on some of this stuff, but when you are working someplace in an at-will environment where you can leave anytime, but they can fire you anytime, it works both ways. And so can you imagine if they had fired these workers and they'd gotten a TRO to keep their jobs? You go, you can't do that. But of course, the hospital's got tons of money, and they got lawyers sitting around with nothing better to do, apparently. So they filed that, and they became like the laughingstock of the internet. So 927,000 views that video got. So in almost a year, who knows, it might break 1 million. I got 3 weeks on that because it came out the 3rd week of January. So that was the number 2. And the number 1 video that I put out last year, number 1 video that of all the videos I put out, I guess I have to say this, of all the views I had last year, The number one video was You Were Right. It's got 1.7 million views, and that is the video where I pointed out that every time I talked about civil asset forfeiture and how mind-bogglingly stupid it is, somebody's going to comment and say, Steve, it's just a matter of time before the cops start pulling over armored trucks and just saying, hey, obviously you got all this money in this big old armored truck. You must be up to no good, even though it's like a Wells Fargo truck or something. And what had happened was there was a courier service that transported cash for some companies that deal with the medicinal herb. And because of the fact that the states have decriminalized this, but the feds have not, there's always a concern about what you do with the cash from these businesses. So there's a courier service that was transporting this cash around, and the police got wind of that, and they just pulled one of them over and said, well, obviously you got all this money in this vehicle. And boom, they did it. So I was pointing out that some of the smartasses in my audience were right. I don't know if all of them were trying to be smart, as they say, but I think some of them were. But they're pointing out the absurdity of it. It's absurd. It really is. Civil asset forfeiture is something that has gotten enough attention now, and enough people understand how absurd it is. And I actually think there's a chance we might be able to make a dent in this in our lifetimes. And you might say, Steve, whoa there, boy. You think we might be able to make a dent in our lifetimes? Hey, you want something? It's been around for hundreds of years. So if we can get it to go away entirely, that'd be great. But I think we can make a dent in it. And so that's what I'm hoping to do. So one of the things that I do on my channel is I try to bring attention, shine a spotlight on these things, not just for entertainment purposes, although some of this clearly is, but some of it is, I think that more people who know about this, the more likely it is that it can get changed. So I'm glad that the number one video of mine that got the views, 1.7 million worth, was about civil asset forfeiture. And that was You Were Right. So that topped the list of the top 10 videos view-wise in 2022, counting down again from number 10, Country Club sued for not giving truck to man who hit hole-in-one. Number 9, dealer repos car teen bought with cash. And that's the one where a kid went in and bought a car with cash, saved up his money, bought the car, and for some weird reason, the dealer decided to repossess the car. And we don't know if they made a mistake or they sold the wrong car. Mistakes were made. But when you sell the car for cash and the guy drives off with it, it's his. So, number 8, dealer tells customer to pay for engine failure during test drive. Number 7, the surefire trick to beat any DUI was debunking a myth. Number 6, court orders all ISPs to block 3 specific services. Robocalls in the top 10. Number 5, city wants woman to pay $259,000 fine for the house next door. Number 4, clerk denied time off quits and entire town shuts down. Number 3, police arrest 10-year-old girl for picture she drew. And number 2, hospital sues at-will workers for getting better jobs. And the only one I had last year that broke 1 million views, went up in February, that was number 1. You Were Right, with 1.7 million views. Those are the top 10 for this year. I thank you. It's all because of the viewers here. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you've watched those videos, obviously, you're among those numbers. And I hope you had a good year. I hope next year's better. Not that this year was bad, but we always hope for better things, right? So we'll have an even better year next year, but we had a good year this year. I'll talk to you next year. Bye-bye.